If I must starve, let it be in your arms. By Ignium 807. Chapter 2. They walk into town late that night. Lambert, unlike Geralt, does not travel with a horse, so it takes the two of them the better part of a day to make it to an inn. By the time they arrive, Jaskier has fallen silent. He's too tired to muster up his usual chatter, arms too heavy to even strum idly on his lute. The Witcher next to him is equally silent, though that's to be expected. What's unexpected is that when they go to the innkeeper to get rooms, Lambert only asks for one. "Are you all right with sharing?" he asks Jaskier. Jaskier can only nod dumbly. Exhaustion drags at his limbs like a 50-kilogram weight. He'll worry about paying Lambert back in the morning, when he's had enough sleep and food to regain control of his own thoughts. They kick their boots off at the door. Lambert starts the long process of removing his armor, while Jaskier strips down to his small clothes and flops backwards onto the bed, letting out a long groan of satisfaction. He knows from his years with Geralt exactly how long it will take for Lambert to rid himself of all his armor. He knows what it will sound like when Lambert closes the window, knows how the bed will dip when a large muscled body drops into it. The movements are familiar to him, even if the Witcher with him isn't. Jaskier lets the comfort of it pull him into sleep. Lambert eyes the bard in his bed with something akin to fear tightening in his stomach. Jaskier is everything Geralt said he would be. He talks like a runaway horse, scratching from one topic to the next without a road to guide him. The babble should be annoying, but Lambert finds its constancy soothing. Besides, he has never had an audience more willing to listen to his stories of a life spent on the path. And if some of them get turned into ballads, well, Lambert was never one to run from a little fame. He tells himself that he offered to share the room with Jaskier out of kindness. The bard spent all his coin in the last town, leaving without a cent. Lambert would know. He spent a week following Jaskier around, looking for any sign that he wasn't as trustworthy as Geralt said he was. But when no such evidence appeared, Lambert was forced to admit that Jaskier was as he seemed. A joyful, welcoming soul. So welcoming, in fact, that he has fallen asleep on one side of the bed, a clear space left by his side for another person to slide into. It's an invitation of sorts, though Lambert won't make assumptions of someone he just met, no matter how much he wants to. He lies down quietly, careful not to disturb the man beside him, and curls his body inwards, just close enough to feel Jaskier's heat, but not close enough to touch. The room smells of wood smoke and the musk of a day spent on the road. Not a hint of fear laces the air, not even discomfort. Lambert holds that sensation in his mind as he drifts off. Sunlight through the window wakes him at dawn. He is still firmly on his side of the bed, but there is a hand pressed against his stomach, burning through his nightshirt. Jaskier is asleep. He is reaching out in his sleep. Lambert nearly throws himself out of bed, terrified by the bolt of pure need that hits him like a punch to the gut. He thought he was used to it by now. The constant thrum of want in his bones is something that all witchers experience at some point. It's the consequence of the terror that humans tend to feel around them, and of the lack of intimacy accompanying that fear. Lambert has dealt with this particular want for decades, always pushing it down or satisfying it for a brief time with a visit to the nearest brothel. Now, though, he is allowing himself to hope, to look for touch where it might be freely given, and it hurts so much more than he expected it to. Lambert goes downstairs in search of food and, hopefully, a monster to kill. He comes back with both. Jaskier is seated on the edge of the bed, yawning dramatically and smelling of something sweet. Lambert sets a plate of biscuits in front of him. Geralt's advice from Kaer Morhen floats back to him, then a wiggling reminder in the back of Lambert's skull. "Talk to him," Geralt had said. "He likes that." Lambert was about to launch into an explanation of what he learned from the innkeeper downstairs, but something about that feels too businesslike. He wants friendship here, closeness. So instead, he says, "Good morning." The simple greeting is rewarded with a smile bright enough to blind a lesser man. "It is a lovely morning," Jaskier says. "Nothing quite like good company and a soft bed to fix a man up after so long on the road." He stretches languidly and pulls a biscuit from the plate Lambert brought up. "Thank you, darling." Lambert's head is spinning. That creeping need is back again. It pushes against his skin, insistent and overwhelming. Lambert struggles to get himself back under control. You're welcome. He clears his throat unsteady and takes a stab at conversation. What are your plans for the day? Practice, mostly, and a bit of writing. A few of the stories you told me yesterday will make superb ballads with a little bit of work, so thank you very much for that. I love Geralt dearly, but he is a horrible storyteller. Lambert can hardly imagine Geralt trying to tell a story. Jaskier must speak fluent grunts if he manages to turn Geralt's particular brand of monosyllables and swear words into the songs Lambert has heard so much about. He realizes, with no small amount of surprise, that he looks forward to hearing them in person. How about you? Jaskier asks. I'll enter the Drowners this afternoon. It should be quick. The innkeeper also told me of a few attacks on the eastern road that sound like a griffin. I'll check that out tomorrow if everything goes as planned tonight. A griffin? Jaskier's eyes light up. I would very much like to accompany you on that investigation if it wouldn't be too much of a hassle. Lambert is already shaking his head. Too dangerous. Griffins are nasty beasts. I wouldn't want you putting yourself in harm's way. Come on, Lambert. Honestly, Geralt does the same thing. Always trying to keep me out of harm's way. Can't the bard have a little adventure now and then? You hang around with witchers, Lambert says dryly. There's plenty of adventure to be found without running headlong into danger. Jaskier rolls his eyes and bounces up from the bed. He throws on a bright blue doublet, runs fingers through his hair until it looks handsomely tousled instead of just sleek mussed, and saunters over to where he laid his lute down the night before. Fine, he says, strumming a few chords, oblivious as Lambert's gaze latches onto his fingers curling around the strings. But I expect to hear all about the Drowners when you get back. The absolute worst part about being separated from Geralt is the loneliness. As much as Jaskier would like to have Geralt by his side at all times, the way they live their lives makes that impossible. Sometimes there are monsters that need slaying in towns without anywhere for a bard to perform. Sometimes there are month-long musical competitions that bore witches to death. A little bit of separation isn't necessary for Jaskier and Geralt. Jaskier understands that truly, but there is nothing he hates more than waking up to an empty bed. A strange sense of relief filled him when Lambert only asked for one room. It meant Jaskier wouldn't have to lie awake like he does on most nights without Geralt by his side, feeling the cold and dark creeping in without anything to stop them. The reassuring presence of another warm body, and a witcher at that, is more comforting than Jaskier wants to admit. Lambert is different from Geralt in 100 different ways, no matter how similar they seem on the surface. For one thing, he is much more willing to talk. He's nowhere near Jaskier's level of loquaciousness, but he speaks in full sentences and makes jokes far more often than his brother. There's the glow of mirth in Lambert's eyes more often than not. It makes Jaskier want to lean in closer to see that amusement catch the light. When Lambert leaves to go hunt the Drowners, Jaskier finds himself staring at the rumpled sheets he leaves behind. The Witcher must have contorted himself in all sorts of strange ways to lie down next to Jaskier all night without touching him once. It reminds him of Geralt when their relationship was new and so many things were still uncertain. Geralt finishes with a groan and collapses next to Jaskier on the bed. His hair is sweaty and clumped from where Jaskier had spent the last hour tugging at it. He turns to Jaskier with an expression so breathtakingly open that Jaskier has to kiss him. It's a soft press of lips that seeks nothing more than closeness. Geralt turns from it before it can really begin, just as he always does. The Witcher pads away from him on silent feet. He's grabbing clothes to sleep in, or maybe a cloth to clean them both up. Jaskier doesn't care. All he wants is to curl up as close to Geralt as he can get, and bask in how it feels to touch another person without the haze of sex and urgency between them. Geralt, come back to bed. Golden eyes flash at him in surprise. They don't talk about this thing between them. They certainly don't cuddle after sex. Why? He asks, voice a low rumble in the quiet of the room. Let me hold you, Jaskier says. It isn't a question, though Geralt can say no if he wants. It's an expression of need in no uncertain terms. For a moment, Geralt is the kind of quiet that hurts in Jaskier's bones. If he is pushed too hard or asked for too much, if Jaskier has ruined this delicate moment, he will never forgive himself. Geralt finally moves, stumbling towards the bed as if pulled there by an unseen force. His eyes on Jaskier's are hungry, aching for more than hands and mouths and filthy words. Unwilling to break the silence that hangs around them, Jaskier holds his arms open. The Witcher falls against him, trembling. His quiet moan is muffled as he tucks his head into Jaskier's shoulder. Jaskier wraps himself around Geralt as tight as he can, hands in long white hair, arms braced on strong shoulders, and legs draped over strong hips. Geralt breaks apart. Jaskier holds him until the sun comes up. Bits and pieces of the story clicked together in Jaskier's mind as time went by. Little mentions of whores who feared his scars, snippets of conversation from frightened village people, and Geralt's own hesitancy to reach for Jaskier for anything other than carnal desires all came together to paint one horrible picture. A picture of deprivation and longing. He sees the same story unfolding before him now. Lambert leans into touches like he fears them, like if he will show pleasure at something and have it immediately taken away. Jaskier caught some of his desperate glances on the road, but not until he sees the bed sheets does he figure out what they mean. Lambert craves something he thinks he cannot have. With a plate of fresh biscuits beside him and the soft morning light falling onto his face like a caress, Jaskier resolves to prove him wrong.